Hi, everyone. I am very excited to be kicking off our webinar here. I am joined by the Genesys team, Ginger Conlon, Thought Leadership Director and Customer Service Advocate, and Michael Logan, Strategic Director of Innovation for North America at Genesys. And we are going to be charting the future of CX with 5 of the top trends that Michael and Ginger are seeing in the space right now. They're going to be sharing some insight from their latest CX in the Age of AI report and diving into insight on the themes that are really driving change in the industry right now. So, very excited to start off here. Ginger and Michael are going to be sharing some of their insights. I will then join to share some CCW digital research, and then we are going to end on a really great conversational Q&A. So with that, I will hand things over to you both.
Thank you, Brooke. I'm Michael Logan, and my background with Genesys is for the last 11 years, I've been working directly with customers on solving their issues in CX, and then also working at events and co-host of Tech Talks in 20 with Ginger Conlon. Ginger?
Yeah, so as Michael said, Ginger Conlon, Thought Leadership Director, co-host of Tech Talks in 20, and also the CX Green Room live stream. Thanks everyone for joining us today. You know, talking trends, always a hot topic. But today we're going to be beyond that a little bit, right? To talk about trends you can harness when you're using customer experience as a strategic asset, which is more and more today. And here's why. And there we go. My computer was not being cooperative in forwarding the slides. Sorry about that. So the reason that customer experience is so important today, our State of Customer Experience report shows that today, more than ever, customer experience is where loyalty is won or lost. Take a look here. 86% of consumers worldwide say a company is only as good as its service, and that's up from 70% in 2022, so huge jump. Nearly a third of consumers stopped doing business with a brand over the past year because of a poor service experience, and 3/4 say they would switch with 5 or fewer poor service experiences. And if you think about the number of interactions in today's digital age, you can get to that 5 pretty quickly. So what does a standout experience mean? Well, consumers are looking for convenient, personalized, and seamless experiences within the contact center and beyond. So it's no surprise that CX leaders worldwide say that their #1 challenge is keeping pace with customer expectations. So with that in mind, let's look at some of the top trends happening not only today, but also will continue moving forward. So these trends will be around for a while. And if you harness even one of them, you'll see a market improvement in your customer experience. So the first one, richly contextualized experiences create mutual value for customers and brands. Well, what does that mean? So service is often about efficiency, which customers appreciate, but it's also often about deflection, which they find frustrating. But that's changing. We're seeing organizations move towards using nearly all interactions as opportunities to build engagement and loyalty. And this includes providing more context and personalization. So proactively using data and AI at nearly every step of a customer's full end-to-end journey. And that's organizations are using that deep understanding of what the customer is trying to achieve, as well as any underlying or unexpressed needs, to be more proactive across that journey. And as I said, this will help strengthen retention, deepen loyalty. Now, what we're also seeing in sync with this is that businesses are trying to create knowledge-based relationships, or some folks call that learning relationships. Don Pepper and Martha Rogers coined that term years ago. So what that means is they're taking data from the customer's interactions and actions with the company and using those over time to create a more personalized experience. So then the customer interacts again with that more personalized experience. And then based on that information, the organizations are personalizing the experience further, creating this virtuous cycle that creates more value for the customer. So they want to do more with the organization. And then that means that you're getting more customer value. But what's interesting is it also creates a switching cost where a customer would have to go start over with another brand and basically teach them their preferences, needs, and expectations and start from scratch. And if you're delivering a great customer experience and showing that you know and value your customers, they're not going to want to leave and switch. And so what does that look like for Sephora? They want their associates on the phone in stores, but also on the phone to take time and get to know what customers are looking for, their needs and expectations, because not only does it create a great experience for the customer, but it increases customer value because they're going to wind up selling more. So, Michael, how does this look from the technology side of the equation?
Yeah, from the technology side, you mentioned a really good point. It's that cost of reentry into a new brand, right? You're collecting all this data on users and customers, and the idea is that you can turn around and use that to your advantage when responding to their needs and inquiries. So for us, on the technology side, it's developing products that can not be so intrusive, but also inform the data in the background, what's occurring. So, for instance, proactive or predictive engagement for us would mean we're monitoring what's happening on the website. Your path that you take during that visit to the website, we can predict what the next best action is. Sometimes that means just presenting the right knowledge article to the user based on where they've been. If, for instance, they're going to do a password reset, let's present them with the steps to do so instead of engaging an agent. But then there's times when an agent is needed or virtual agents are needed. And those moments are more meaningful. And I often use the example of when you walk into a store and someone runs up to you and says, "Can I help you?" And you're just like, "No, I'm just browsing." But if someone comes up to you and says, "The hats you're looking at are 25% off today," they've recognized where you're at, they've identified what you're doing, and they've presented an option that you're more likely to respond to. And that's really what we mean when we say predictive engagement. We can predict when the best time is to respond to someone and how we do that.
And I think that's a good lead into our next trend. So we've got two trends coming up on, no surprise, AI, because it is a hot topic everyone's talking about. And so AI is changing the game and widening the gap between customer experience leaders and laggards. So it's more important than ever to take some steps forward with AI, whatever that might mean for your organization. Now, you're getting a sneak peek today. We have a report coming out, a customer experience in the age of AI. So I'm going to share a bit of that data before the report comes out. So very exciting, drum roll. So 27% of CX leaders say that AI is already a critical part of their CX operations. And another 43% expect that to be the case within the next 5 years. Nearly 60% say that using AI in the customer experience will increase customer loyalty and lifetime value, leading, of course, to improved financial performance. And then 76% of CX leaders say that they're already using or piloting AI to better personalize the customer experience. And that's where this trend comes in. AI creates a world of unprecedented understanding and insight. So what does that mean? It means organizations are becoming much smarter about using AI to better understand who the customer is and what they want, as Michael was saying. They're increasing the use of event data, behavioral analytics, sentiment analysis, all so they can deeply understand the experience across the full customer journey and then within those individual interactions. And in doing so, they're becoming less reliant on asking customers for information that they already have. Instead, they're using that data to be more proactive, making customers feel known and valued, which is so important. So Now, organizations using AI to create better experience, it's not just about the customer, it's also about employees. AI is becoming that co-pilot that you keep hearing about for agents and for supervisors, and as Michael will talk about a little bit coming up next, for folks on the development team, right? It's accelerating the speed with which they can access information and accomplish tasks. And so at Procter and Gamble, what this looks like on the customer side is, as I mentioned, they don't want to keep asking for more information. Whenever they can, they want to use information they have to make their customer experiences more relevant, more personalized.
There is a lot of ways. There's so much to talk about when you bring up that, and of course, you brought up AI. We almost have to. AI has been around a long time, but now all of a sudden it is it's at our fingertips. That's the difference. We've heard about AI for decades. It's always been in the background, but now it's there for everyone to take advantage of. So of course, businesses want to utilize that. And one way in which we can enhance CX specifically is for CX. Traditionally, it's been skills-based routing. It's finding the skill based on a selection through an IVR, and then that's routed to the agent that has that skill. But we have quickly moved away from that. Next gen solutions of Evolved CX means that you're using predictive routing to use AI to predict the best agent to handle each interaction based on what we know about the agent and based on what we know about the customer. So like you mentioned earlier, having all that data that we've collected on them becomes of value to the customer when they come back and re-engage that brand, because now the brand can utilize past information about you to ensure that you get the best representative the next time you call in. They'll match you up with the best based on the KPIs that are important to the customer, and then utilizing what we know about that agent. So when you talk about that also being a value to the agent, now the agent's handling the interactions they want to handle. They're more suited to handle. They're connected with customers that appreciate that. So in all, everyone's getting a better experience. So when we talk about the simple way, something easy to turn on and configure, predictive routing is fairly easy in most instances to get turned on. It's the data in the background that you'd start off with getting that set up and established.
Fantastic. And so that helps with CX transformation, which is one of the trends that we're talking about. Agile orchestration of AI technologies is driving that CX transformation. So another preview stat from the AI report, 83% of CX leaders say using AI in the customer experience will be a clear differentiator for their organization in the future. And 65% of CX leaders are using or piloting AI to streamline the customer journey across channels, which we keep mentioning how important that is. So we're seeing a shift from organizations focusing on AI in silos and on individual use cases to embedding it throughout the customer and employee experience as a business driver. Now, of course, they're still going to focus on it in those individual use cases because you want to make sure that those interactions and use cases are optimal, right? But you want to also make sure they're connected so that your full journey is smooth to the customer. And that includes when they're interacting with employees and then making the interaction smooth for the employees as well by some of the tools that Michael's been talking about. So the goal here, of course, is to create more personalized and seamless experiences at scale, while also gaining more insight into issues and opportunities. And so to help accomplish this, organizations are selecting the types of AI that is best suited for the individual interactions, but also across that full journey. What makes sense? As Michael said, we've been using various types of AI for a long time. So how should we use them together better moving forward, and not just implement AI for AI's sake because, quote, everyone's doing it, right? And AI is so important for personalization, and that's That's important because 80% of consumers globally say that their number one form of personalization is getting the service they want in the channel of their choice when they need it. And a very close second to that is, as Michael talked about earlier, getting to the person that can actually, who's best suited to help them solve their problem or get their answer, get their query answered. So I love this quote from Joe Wheeler, who is the author of the Digital First Customer Experience. He says, digital first companies use personalization to create a revenue growth flywheel. So basically that's that knowledge-based relationship that I was talking about before. The more you know, and the more you use that to personalize the customer experience, the more valued the customer feels. So the more likely they are to spend more with you more often, recommend your organization. And then the actions that they take that inform what you want to do next to even further personalize that experience. And again, create more value for the customer, but also more value for your organization because you're increasing lifetime value in the process.
You know, everybody's using it. I like how you put that in quotes because, I think you're absolutely right. Everyone is using it in ways. They're all exploring ways in which they can orchestrate that perfect experience. Everybody wants this experience when they're creating their CX strategy. They want to make sure that they've implemented a solution that creates this kind of revenue growth flywheel, which is a great example of what you want. And some of the ways you'll need to do is having a solution that can provide you the ability to do things like co-piloting, whether it's co-piloting the agent, the supervisor, or even the admin in some situations. That seamless integration of the AI technology and, I guess, traditional CX solutions, but being able to blend those to create a co-pilot for an agent, which provides easy access to the knowledge based on what's happening in the conversation in that moment, but also providing next best actions and wrap-up codes and highlighting of information, as well as a summary of the information at the end. That provides not only a great interaction, but it also reduces those KPIs. You start to get better business objectives met based on the fact that you're reducing handle time, reducing wrap-up time, and you're ensuring quality across the information that you're gathering in that situation. So we're taking a lot of the steps away from the human, but we're just augmenting what they're able to do. We're not removing the human. We're basically enhancing what they can do. They become reviewers of that information to make sure it's correct and accurate. And same with the supervisor. Having all that data that has been created and summarized gives them quick snapshots of what's happening. It gives them next best action for how to improve that agent performance. And then when it comes to administrators, being able to build these tools becomes easier because now we can use tools like generative AI that can create content, create these response engines or these responses and these virtual agents and bots and things along those lines to help get to those things faster. They become easier to create. Conversational AI can create these conversations based on your data and very little heavy lifting from your staff and admin. So in order to create this orchestration layer, it's important to look at some of the resources you have and ensure that you have the right resources around your developers and staff in place. As you go through this CX evolution, some of the things you'll look at is what type of developers do I have? Do I have API developers? And the developers do I have? Can I retrain them to meet that need moving forward?
So that's a perfect transition to talking more about the employee experience. The next trend, employee experiences are personalized as organizations increasingly blend CX and EX strategies. So along with what Michael was talking about, using AI before, during, and after interactions with customers, improving that experience for the agent with those AI tools, successful organizations are increasingly focusing on employees as individuals who can make that valuable impact on the customer experience So these, in addition to using AI during interactions and for coaching and for routing and things like that, they're also using them to create more personalized environments and career paths that leverage employees' strengths and set them up for success, not only within the contact center, but potentially beyond the contact center, because they imagine, someone who's working with customers all the time, taking that invaluable knowledge with them to other parts of the organization. So the goal initially is to be able to enable agents to better solve customer problems, to become those knowledge workers, because as AI takes away those more rote interactions, the agents are going to be handling those more challenging tasks, and they need that training to handle those more challenging interactions, right? And those most complex customer issues. So, of course, the key strategy is to support these shifts using AI across the employee experience, everything from creating onboarding, personalized onboarding plans and training and development programs, to developing intelligent forecasting and scheduling, and using those tools so that it's much easier for employees to personalize their schedules. And all of these things will help improve retention, because there will be better career pathing and better work-life balance. And so when you equip employees to succeed, it's not only critical for reducing attrition and building that high-performing contact center workforce, but also for ensuring a standout customer experience. And if we look at that AI report, 1/3 of CX leaders say they're already using AI to improve agent training, making it better and faster. And another 30% plan to do so over the next year. And so I love this quote from Stephanie at Principal Financial Group, because what she's saying is that for their organization, employee experience and customer experience are inextricably linked. And I think that's a great sentiment that every organization should adopt, because you're going to have so much of a better customer experience when your employees, the customer facing ones, and the folks behind the scenes supporting them are happier in their role.
Yeah, and we mentioned Copilot and how that can assist that strategy and making sure that customers are getting the information they need in a timely manner, in a personalized manner. To take it to the next step, we talked a little bit about how Copilot's there for supervisors as well. We're listening to every interaction now. That's something that's a must have at this point. We're listening to every interaction, but we're also grading those interactions and doing evaluations on those in real time, so we can get a better understanding what happened on that interaction. But when we look at what the information we're giving back to the employee at this point, it's simple, making sure that there is a strategy in place that reflects how well they're doing, and they get real-time feedback. And gamification is a great example of how that can happen. And it's not just the standard KPIs that we're monitoring any longer. We can look at things like empathy scores and determine how empathetic a customer service, or how empathetic the agent was in providing customer service in those moments. And those are scores that the agents are seeing. And the agent has that ability to see how well they're performing against not only their standard KPIs and the metrics they need to meet, but against their teams. And that helps them, that reinforces that ability to get better at their job. Now, on the other side of that, when we talk about servicing the employee better, we know that scheduling is often a difficult task, and managing a schedule and managing someone's personal life and versus that work-life balance, having scheduling solutions that give information back to the agent, be able to ask questions like, hey, what's my schedule look like next year? What's my anticipated schedule? If I was to ask off for next July or next August, what does that look like? What's the impact of that? And having a real-time answer to it, and not involving humans every time they need that answer, but giving them visibility to that schedule regardless of where they're at, and giving them access to see future staffing needs, future staffing requirements from them is important, but also just giving them the ability to get better at their job. And those next best actions those extend to supervisors so they know what's happening with that with that agent and how they're going to get better in their role as at servicing the customer. And last piece, just as we talk about how all these improvements, we talk about, and this will lead into our next point. It's removing a lot of those transactional engagements that they have with customers. That's a true improvement for quality of life for an agent, where they're not doing transactional interactions repeatedly, and having the right solution in place to provide a customer the confidence that they can get through engagements and have the answer that they want.
That was a great lead in. If you think about all of these trends pulled together, they really kind of lead you to this trend number 5, which is the contact center becomes a strategic hub of customer advocacy and insight. And I love this. The contact center is a custodian of a rich set of customer data, not just from within the contact center, but also from interactions in connected channels and functions. And so, from across the organization. So businesses that recognize the value of this are working to create another virtuous cycle, this time sharing data from the contact center with those other channels and functions, and then getting data from those channels and functions and pulling it into the contact center to create that holistic view of the customer and their full end-to-end journey. And this will enable them to position the contact center as a center of excellence that advocates for the customer. Of course, technology is helping to streamline the data sharing and provide access to real-time insights across those touch points that CX leaders can interpret and act on. And futurist Ross Dawson, what he predicts is that the contact center will evolve to what he calls a contact network, so that when a customer is interacting with a brand, they may not necessarily wind up in the contact center. They might wind up talking to someone outside the contact center who's actually the right person to help them. And it shows kind of the blurring of the lines across those functions and what that might look like in the future.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not talking to a person at all. As I mentioned, you have one of our customers spoke about how being able to create a virtual agent that that contained 85% of those transactional interactions. It's a huge lift, a huge burden removed from the agents when they don't have to do the password resets, the change of appointment scheduling, whatever that might be, and they can focus on what customers really, those really important moments. But you're right, it's not always going to be someone in that contact center, and having a solution in place that can route pieces to back office workers to process these either tasks or perhaps take response or take action on a customer inquiry, and having the tools in place that do that, and also having the right AI solution in place that can start to take those tasks, especially in the virtual agent situation, and allow customers to not just have one issue. They can switch intents as they go through these processes and know when the right time to hand off to that human, instead of being stuck in that cycle that we want to avoid those situations in all means, keeping someone trapped in a endless cycle or loop. But the ability to know when to hand off and the right resource to hand it off to, or even having virtual agents that can complete these tasks and really remove those humans where they're just there to, again, verify and check and make sure that if follow-up's needed, they can provide that.
So, Michael, what's next?
What's next? Well, when we talk about what we embedding our AI into a product, we really talk about it being really threaded throughout the product. It's not one piece. It just doesn't align just to one part of the solution. It's throughout. And that's really what you're looking for, because we talked about a lot of these pieces where the data travels from customer to agent, we have all the KPI data, we have backend data, we have all these resources, and orchestrating that and being able to do that while predicting what's happening next, automating a lot of it and augmenting, and all for the purpose of optimizing that experience, and doing so with AI that is secure, that is native to the platform, and that has that it's extensible, being able to have the right resources in place to use API first type development to get to those data points and provide access to the right pieces and parts that you need to create and orchestrate these experiences.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Brooke, coming on back to join us.
Yeah, thank you both so much for sharing. So many great insights and trends you talked about: seamless experiences, personalized experiences, AI, the employee experience, everything that really needs to be top of mind right now. So thank you so much for sharing. I wanted to reiterate some of the points that you all made and back them up with some of our own CCW digital research, because these are clearly trends that we're seeing as well. And then we can dive into some more questions for you both so we can get a conversation going here. So I wanted to start off by just sharing a little bit of our own research. We just conducted our annual CX trends, challenges, and opportunities market study, where we actually ask customers what they're seeing in this space, what kind of experiences they're getting. And so I want to share a little bit of insight from that. So we actually found that we're talking a lot about personalization. It's obviously something that we're working towards, but only 16% of customers today said that their experience right now feels actually personalized to their needs, which I think is really interesting, because I don't think it's for a lack of trying. I think we are putting effort into personalizing the experience. We have the tools and technology that can hopefully get us there. But I think we're kind of missing potentially like a clear definition of what personalization is right now and how we can actually deliver on it. And Ginger, you mentioned the idea that having access to your own channel of choice and being able to utilize that in a really efficient manner, that's what personalization kind of means to customers. So I think having clearer guidelines on how you want to personalize and go beyond just generic support, I think that's a really important initiative moving forward. So just wanted to mention that, because I think it's such an important topic, but it's obviously important to make sure that both the organization and the customer are on the same page with personalization, and delivering it in a way that feels really meaningful to them is so important there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So one other or two other things I want to mention here, and then we can dive into the questions. I wanted to talk about self-service, which Michael, you actually ended on kind of a good point, talking about how we never want to get in that loop where we feel like we're repeating ourselves, we're asking the same questions, we're stuck in a loop, not getting the response or the solution that we really need. So we found that 49% of customers said that they would be much more likely to use self-service and digital if the information that they had was instantly passed on to a live agent for a contextual experience. And that was one of your top trends, is having context and delivering a really rich contextualized experience. So customers are open to engaging on the channel that they want. They just want to make sure it's a really seamless experience. And I think that's what you were reiterating, Ginger, is that it's not just about personalizing and saying their name, it's making sure that they have this really seamless experience, and that when they are potentially escalated, that all that context is there and they're not missing out on key details and they're not repeating themselves. So just a really great point on your end, and I think something that we're definitely seeing from the customer's perspective.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to mention here, sorry, I keep cutting you off, is just about the employee experience. You guys mentioned it a couple of times. Obviously, it's such a key initiative and something that we always need to be focusing on. But I wanted to call out just a few areas that we got feedback from CX leaders on where they're implementing AI to enhance the employee experience. So 92% say that agent assist for knowledge management is going to help them empower employees and improve satisfaction and performance. 89% are leveraging it for self-service, and 82% for customer sentiment analytics to really help agents personalize and adapt interactions to specific customers. So a lot of information. I just wanted to share some of our own insights because it really does align with what both of you talked about. And it's just always interesting hearing, from the customer's perspective, what they're thinking. So Yeah, happy to share all of that. But diving into the questions here, I wanted to direct my first question to you, Ginger. I just mentioned that personalization from the customer's end, it might not be where it needs to be right now. So, where do you think companies are going wrong when it comes to personalization? And why are they really struggling right now to deliver that meaningful personalization that we're looking for?
Yeah, I think you really kind of answered the question right when you're talking about understanding what personalization means to the customer. And I love the fact that you ask meaningful personalization, because what what does personalization look like? And what's challenging about that is when you talk about personalization, people automatically think about what you said, right? A marketing piece that has my name on it, that you know has, oh, hey, last week you bought these blue shoes. Do you want a blue, purse to go with it, or whatever? And that's personalization. It's important, but customers love personalization in their service interactions as well, and actually more than in their marketing interactions. Like we talked about, it's getting them to the channels that they want, making those channels available, being connected to the right person. But it's also using a little bit of your voice of customer to figure out, what does meaningful personalization mean to your different customers, right? Your high value customers may expect a different level of personalization than a casual customer. And so what does that mean? You ask, you need to ask, and then you can take those steps to personalize in the way that makes the most sense.
Definitely. Really good insight there. And I totally agree. I think obviously different customers expect different levels of personalization. Maybe, like you said, a high value, really engaged customer might expect you to know a little bit more than them, more about them than someone who's just casually engages with your brand. So it's important to just have a distinction between the both.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what Michael mentioned about using predictive um, for personalization is really valuable.
Definitely. So my next question here is for you, Michael. From our most recent employee engagement market study, we found that 80% of leaders said that AI will not impact their headcount, but simply absorb like repetitive tasks and simple tasks. So you mentioned that the importance of agents making a really invaluable impact moving forward. How do you specifically see the agent role shifting in the next few years, and how will AI support this new reality?
Yeah, you mentioned, kind of drawn off the last response or the last question, expectations have changed and they've shifted, right? So that personalization is extremely important, because when you get into how AI impacts it, it provides, and I think I gave some examples of customers, 85% of they're able to contain 85% of the transactional information in just a virtual agent. That allows, so the difference in what agents will do moving forward is they're going to be handling the more engaging conversations, the more important conversations, the more empathetic, in some cases, more empathetic conversations where they really need to be focused on what's happening. They're not just providing answers. They really need to be engaged in that way. They're also, as I mentioned a few times, they become less of the information provider and more of the fact checker in that regards. So instead of looking for when an inquiry comes in, they're not looking for the answer is presented to them. They're verifying that. And then when the summarization at the end of the call or digital interaction happens, they're reviewing that content and just ensuring that, yes, in fact, this is all correct. So they're not, some of that information has, I guess you could review this as somebody that was really good at note taking needs to be really good at reading and making sure that those follow-ups are correct. And then supervisors, when we talk about staffing, it's not just the agents. Supervisors now have the ability to do so much more and reduce their efforts. I think one stat Ginger and I have talked about before, they're saving up to 2 hours a day. That's so much of their day is now freed up where they're not reviewing and doing the process of listening to an entire interaction. They're only delivered the interactions that are important. So their job becomes easier because now they can navigate through these AI tools quicker and get to the more meaningful conversations that have a better impact on how they improve agent performance moving forward.
Yeah, and that all creates a waterfall effect, because if you think about it, now agents are able to focus on the complex interactions, and the rote interactions are happening faster. So then handle time, or the time it takes to get for a customer to get their interaction resolved, are both getting faster. So customers are happy because one of the things that they want is a fast resolution, right? It's the top of the list in our state of CX. So using AI to support agents helps that as well. And interestingly, state of CX, one stat, the number one strategic CX priority, CX leaders said, is improving the employee experience by either implementing new technology or connecting existing technology. So the employee experience is the top strategic priority right now, which I think is amazing, and yay.
I agree. I mean, it makes so much sense. The better their experience, the easier, the more connected it is, the better experiences they're going to deliver. So it's such an important piece. And great hearing that it's the number one area of focus right now. So I have another question for you, Michael. You mentioned this idea of forming a strategic hub for customer engagement, which I think is really exciting. With more connected flow of data, you can contribute to productive change and continuous growth. So it's so many positives. But to some people, it can be daunting. It can be challenging to know where to start in actually building this customer engagement hub. So from your perspective, what insight would you have on how leaders can actually execute on that?
Yeah, you brought it up earlier too. It's when you said that they're not getting the personalization they want in their interactions. We look at what we're going through, and the studies kind of reflect that. This is all still pretty new, right? This movement towards AI-driven conversations and providing more virtual agents. It's been there in the past, but it was a lot of technical effort to get to those points. Well, now it's getting easier to do those things. So we're getting it right now. We're going through that growth phase of how do we utilize AI. And looking just today, looking at our meeting platform here, I noticed, and I've been on this platform many times, I noticed that there's a new button that says AI companion right there in the middle of the that's new, that I haven't noticed before. So we're starting to see it pop up so much more often across platforms, whether those are social platforms or even this one here. But the idea that we're still learning, where's that value going to be? What's going to happen? So how does an organization manage that? Well, one is it's important, and why the struggles there is because organizations have followed the structure for years where they've worked in silos, and we hear a lot about how teams are working in silos. And you look at CX, and CX is traditionally just a small portion of what IT does. It's just an IT part, and we've seen that in the past. But now we're seeing the more evolved organizations seeing everything as a whole, data as a whole. Let's get all of our data together in one, make sure it's all available to all resources. And CX isn't just an arm of IT any longer. It's become this strategic hub of reinforcing the brand's identity through marketing and sales and all the other positive things. It's that one-to-one relationship you have with your customers that you don't want. You want to make sure that's right, because of how valuable that is. So the other shift that needs to happen is just really a change management approach internal on how we structure data, how we work as one organization and not siloed. And then finally, I mentioned earlier, when we talk about your development staff, you start to recognize what type of developers you need, and that with cloud-based solutions, change happens really fast. And having teams focused on areas of that business, that CX specifically, focused on certain areas of CX platform, those teams can focus on what's happening next and start building for the future in that regards. Instead of, when we've heard developers talk about this, traditionally it was, let's talk about what we want to do. And they have these long-term goals and development cycles. Well, now we're hearing, what are we doing next? Because things are happening so rapid, so at such a rapid pace. And that's what it means to really work in a more CX evolution strategy or agile approach with this. So, yeah.
And I'll add just, of course, it's the obvious, right? Any initiative that's enterprise-wide needs to have cross-team collaboration, right? So start there. And what are the goals to create that virtuous cycle of connecting data across the organization to improve the employee and customer experience? And then also journey management tools can help that because it helps give you that more pervasive view, but also cloud-based tools, because a cloud-based CX platform gives you that platform that everything can connect to and helps streamline, data flowing across channels and things like that. So when you're trying to create that connected experience, and going back to the State of CX report, the number one technology issue to support strategic CX goals like this is implementing a CX platform that integrates systems. And the number two is connecting data and technology to deliver an omni-channel experience. So all these things come together towards that end of creating that virtuous cycle from the contact center as that strategic hub.
Yeah, I mean, really great insight from both of you. And I just think it's a really admirable, exciting framework to be thinking about, because obviously the customer experience is not just dependent on the contact center. There's so much more that's involved. So having that customer engagement hub that really informs like every piece of your customer journey throughout your organization, I think is really, really exciting, and such a great way to be thinking about it. So Ginger, I have a question for you here. You mentioned in the presentation that 83% of CX leaders say that AI will be a clear differentiator for their organization in the future, which I think is definitely true. Can you share some insight into how it will differentiate modern companies, and what are some of the risks that it poses if companies don't adapt right now?
So going back to the State of CX, one of the top strategic CX priorities is using AI for customer understanding and personalization. And as we keep talking about the importance of personalization, it's no surprise that that's in the top three. And so that's one way that modern companies can use AI to differentiate themselves. Michael mentioned quite a lot in terms of the employee experience and streamlining and improving the employee processes, not just for agents, but for supervisors, developers. And then, and Michael, feel free to add on, but I'll just say one quick thing about if they don't adapt, the gap between AI leaders and laggards is just going to keep getting bigger. If you are not a leader, because obviously not everyone is, if you're somewhere else on the spectrum, you need to be moving forward. Otherwise, the gap is going to get so wide that you're not going to be able to catch up, and you're going to wind up just losing out to your competition. So whatever the right step forward for you is, you need to start taking it.
And just to add on to that, every AI clearly is one of the number one topic that we hear, not only at events, but also just from customers, and they're hearing it from vendors too. Vendors are buying into that, and they're utilizing it. So we still see some CX leaders that feel that they can buy their way out of the problem, and they feel like they can layer on more and more solutions on top of their existing platform or their older solutions. That becomes harder and harder to manage. It does slow things down, and also makes your approach to change a little more cumbersome. It's harder to shift and evolve when you're still trying to layer a problem, or solve a problem by adding layers, I should say. So it's for those that still haven't adapted. It's not that we point the finger and say, why haven't you done this? I think a lot of what's happening is they're buying into what vendors are approaching them with. They're buying into that strategy that we can build onto this and it'll work. And then they're still probably in a very siloed business structure where it makes it difficult to move forward with some of these projects and moving through a CX evolution. And then we know those struggles are there. We talk to customers all the time about that. So.
Definitely. So from what both of you are saying, there is definitely a sense of urgency here. Actions need to be taken. So for leaders who maybe are a little bit behind right now in their journey, Michael, where do you recommend that they start? What are some of the most powerful next steps that you would recommend to really secure their future CX success?
Yeah, that's a great question because what we're seeing is, and I've mentioned this earlier, but I'll definitely want to repeat this. It's having a strategy of change management starts at the top. We've heard that many times where in conversations Ginger and I have had, and that means making sure that everyone has buy-in on going through some CX evolution, and that by starting at the top, you kind of open up some of the doors to all that siloed information and data that's very, very necessary. Having access to data is the number one key to driving this. And, when we talk about, it is a very real thing that we need that companies and brands and CX leaders need to go through this, because when we talk about expectations shifting and what our customers are expecting now from us as brands it's so evolving. There's so many different channels. There's new channels that still come that pop up occasionally across social media, especially. So there's still needs to be able to adapt quickly in that regards. But to kind of wrap up, when we talk about what leaders need to do is focus on, again, the staffing that they have. Once they make that evolution to a cloud first solution, having the right developers in place, and whether that means restaffing or in most cases it means retraining. It doesn't always mean restaffing, just retraining them to meet the needs of for instance, with us, it's having API developers that can really get to the data quickly and build these connected points across all the different there's so many different tools that an organization uses. A company has so many data points as well as other solutions that they need access to, and having real-time access to those is extremely important. So, Ginger, you want to
I'll just
add
add one
please?
That matches basically like anytime you're doing something that's a transformation, right? You buy a pizza, it looks delicious. You can't eat it in one bite. You have to eat it a slice at a time, right? So when you're thinking about CX transformation, what's your first slice? What are your high priority use cases? Where can you start where you're going to see some benefits, some, as they say, quick wins, right? So that you can get the momentum going to expand it a piece. So you're not feeling overwhelmed by all the things, because customer experience is so broad. You could start in too many places and not make any progress. So pick the ones that matter. The slice with the most pepperoni on it goes first, and then you have the other slices.
Clearly, you've never had pizza with me, Ginger, because you can just fold the whole thing into one big sandwich. Let's not do that.
Love that. I love that analogy. It's such a great way to think about it, and such great advice, because there's a lot out there and it can be very daunting. So taking that first slice, making sure that it's the most relevant use case for your organization, I think is such a great first step. So thank you, Ginger, and thank you, Michael, so much for joining us. I so appreciate you sharing your insight and your new research. I know the report's coming out shortly. So thank you both so much.
Thank you.